We're learning more details this morning about the deadly shooting at an ICE facility in Dallas yesterday, as well as the suspect behind it. Investigators say one person was killed and two others were critically wounded in this attack. No ICE officers were injured, and the shooting victims were all detainees. Their identities have not yet been released. Authorities identified the gunman, though, as 29-year-old Joshua John. He died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. DHS officials say John fired indiscriminately at the facility from the rooftop of a nearby building. The motive and the target of the shooter was not immediately clear, but the FBI is calling the attack an act of targeted violence. FBI Director Kash Patel posted an image of bullets the Bureau says were found near the shooter's body, one with the words anti-ICE written on it. NBC News spoke with the gunman's older brother, who said the suspect was not interested in politics on either side and that he did not have strong feelings about ICE. Public records show John was registered as an independent in Oklahoma and voted last November. According to the New York Times, John voted in the Democratic primary in Texas back in 2020 and had an extensive online history, but showed little interest in politics, posting mostly about video games, cars, and drugs. I want to bring in MSNBC correspondent Rosa Flores, who's been covering this story since it broke yesterday morning. Rosa, what do we know at this point about the shooter's motive, and what new information do we have from DHS about the changes that they now are planning on making following this shooting at an ICE facility?
Well, Ali, according to DHS, they have increased security at all ICE facilities across the country, and they are citing a 1,000% increase in the number of assaults against agents. When it comes to the motive, there is no motive declared at the moment by the FBI. The FBI, of course, is still investigating. It's very early in this investigation. But as you mentioned, the FBI did release a photo of an unspent casing with the words anti-ICE on them, hinting at a possible motive, but the FBI only saying that this investigation is an act of targeted violence. With that said, DHS did issue a statement to us late last night where they declare a motive. Here's the statement in part by DHS Assistant Secretary Tricia McLaughlin. It says, in light of today's horrific shooting that was motivated by hatred for ICE and the other unprecedented acts of violence against ICE law enforcement, including bomb threats, cars being used as weapons, rocks and Molotov cocktails thrown at officers, and doxing online of officers' families, DHS will immediately begin increasing security at ICE facilities across the country. Now, she went on to say in that statement, Ali, that politicians and media should tone down the rhetoric.
Everyone, I think, needs to tone down the rhetoric. I think that's been borne out in every news cycle that we've been covering. But I do think it's important the way that, before we go into our next read and our next segment, the way that we highlight something that you said, that there's no explicitly leftist motive here. Instead, it was motivated by maybe a hatred of ICE. And certainly there is no way to support that kind of reaction to simple policy disagreements. But Rosa, you lay out some really important basic facts here. They're going to help us as we go on this morning. I want to thank you for coming on to talk about it with us. MSNBC's Rosa Flores. Thank you. And Trump administration officials pointed to this incident as another example of political violence motivated by the left, blaming the Democratic Party's rhetoric for the attack. FBI Director Kash Patel posted on social media that initial review of evidence at the scene was ideological in nature, including an image of the bullets that have the message anti-ICE in his post. Homeland Security Secretary Noem also weighed in on X, writing, quote, "These horrendous killings must serve as a wake-up call to the far left that their rhetoric about ICE has consequences." And White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt posted this: "Democrats must stop demonizing the heroic men and women of ICE who are just doing their jobs to keep Americans safe." In a Truth Social post, President Trump wrote he's calling on Democrats to stop their rhetoric against ICE and America's law enforcement. Vice President J.D. Vance echoed that sentiment when speaking to a crowd in North Carolina yesterday.
But if you look at the political violence in our country over the last couple of months, the last couple of years, it is not a both sides problem. It is primarily on one side of the political aisle. So if we are going to truly go after the political violence in this country, we need the Democratic leadership of Washington, D.C. to look in the mirror.
I want to bring on set with me MSNBC White House correspondent Akayla Gardner. So, Akayla, we've seen the White House and Democrats alike say we need to take the temperature down. But when you see the reaction that they're having to this ICE shooting, when the details are very much still coming together, and obviously there was an anti-ICE bias at play here to motivate someone to do something as horrific as this. But what do you see in the administration that has consistently, in calling out political violence, seemed to only raise the temperature?
One thing that's really important to underline, as you mentioned earlier, is the fact that we're still learning about the shooter and what their motives were. So that's important to underline.
Yeah.
But it really felt from President Trump to Vice President Vance and on down, there was this quick reaction to blame the far left. And that was something that we've seen really in also the Charlie Kirk shooting as well. You saw Vice President Vance there blaming recent political violence, saying that it's not an issue on both sides, which I think there's an argument clearly to say that's not the case, that there's been attacks against people on both sides of the aisle. But the message on down, I really think, is still they want the rhetoric specifically on ICE and law enforcement to be toned down. And yet, as you mentioned, they're still continuing to blame Democrats. Vance specifically called out the California governor, Gavin Newsom, blaming him specifically for political rhetoric. So it certainly seems that they are taking this approach here, even though there's plenty of people who say this is not the right way to go about this.
And I think that there is a line that we have to find in our politics where both sides can passionately disagree with each other because there are really clear differences between the policies that each party holds. And this is a conversation that I've been having with a lot of my sources, Democrats and Republicans, about the ways to bring passion to a debate and not have it spiral to the darkest points that we've seen it in recent months and years.